Welcome back to West Texas View.
Welcome back to the West Texas View. Dr. Bobby Jane and Dr. Stephanie Caples from the Texas Tech University Health Science Center have been talking about this segment on the differences between gender and race in treating a patient, and particularly when we left, we were talking about responsive to medicine. So, Dr. Jane, continue that.
Right, and as I was saying, that it's a very important aspect for it, and any psychiatrist who deals with an increasingly diversified population in America, that certain populations are more responsive or have more sensitive to medications. For example, South Asians, Hispanic groups, Orientals, or patients or folks from Far East Asia, they do have less tolerance to medications. So the dose requirement for medications much less compared, in general, I'm not saying it's always the rule, in general is less compared to the mainstream Caucasian population, Anglo-Saxon population. The side effects profiles also, they are more sensitive to medications compared to, the dose requirement is also very different. Dose requirement in general is much less in South Asian, Far Eastern Asian, even Hispanic population is much less compared to African Americans or and I was want to say that because depression is so culturally influenced, depression, as we talked about previous segments, is not only the culture and the environment influences the way depression affects, but also genes. When I say genes, your traits, your family traits that you inherit from your parents have a lot to say with it. And to give you an example,
so environment, gender and race and genes, all of those.
It's a whole mess, and that's why no single intervention of depression is helpful. If for example, blood pressure, medicine like diabetes, of course genes are there, but insulin, if you give insulin, it gets better. Depression, just medication or just counseling never gets better. It's only the combination of these things. That's why we need to try as many different things as possible to get the best possible results and the quickest possible results. Coming back to the topic we were talking about race and gender and depression, to give you an example over here, the highest rates of depression and probably the highest rate of suicide in American population, North American US population, is actually the Native Americans.
So our American Indians.
American Indians. The feather kind of Indians, not the dot kind of Indians that I am from. So coming to the point, so it says not only about the socioeconomic or the nature of the environment they come from. That of course are going to influence the response to treatment. Also be very different. When we intervene, I'm sure her task becomes very complicated when she intervenes someone who's not from the mainstream cultural origin, but from a very different cultural origin, say South Asian. And both of us have to be very, very sensitive, not only knowing that if a person is coming from a different cultural background, what kind of symptoms of depression more likely to present, but also what kind of intervention works.
Yeah.
From the medication point of view and from the counseling point of view.
And then a large part of it is understanding what the patient thinks of what we're telling them, right? Because that's going to play into
their
the
perception.
Their perception. Are they going to do what we're asking them to do? If they don't believe in medication for depression, chances are they're not going to follow Dr. Jane's orders, right?
Yeah.
So it's very important to hear their perception of it based on their culture, based on their gender, based on any beliefs that they have about what we're telling them.
So it's much more difficult to treat a person with mental situations than it is physical because of this barrier.
Well, I think it could be different. I think it's different. I think our culture comes into play in every interaction we have. So whether you're going to a family physician or not, our culture is going to come into play. For instance, if I was going to go to my family physician, they might begin to screen me at my age, which I'm not going to give you, for high blood pressure, for diabetes, because it's rampant in the Black culture. So culture comes into play in regular medicine. But for psychiatry, I think it poses an extra challenge because we don't have the lab tests, because we don't have x-rays. We can't hold up a picture and say this is your depression. So it's really a lot about our belief, the patient's belief system, and then what the patient is telling us, because we can't go run these tests. It's all about what the patient and their family members are reporting to us, and that poses an extra challenge.
But the other thing that is so maddening to me, it seems, if I were in your shoes, is that they can hide some of this. For example,
sure.
if I go in and they do a lab test,
Right.
that blood tells them exactly. But if one comes to you and you say, no, I didn't have any of those symptoms after
Yes.
I took that medicine, or yeah, I'm feeling better, I don't think I need to come anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just,
Right. I can't tell you how many times probably
Yeah,
Dr. Jane and
yeah,
I have both
yeah,
experienced
yeah.
that. I had a situation last week where a patient called and said, oh, I'm having hallucinations again. And I'm thinking, you never told me you were having hallucinations.
begin with,
To begin
yeah.
with, you denied it. And so
Right.
I think it's kind of known in our field that either they don't tell you everything, or you get this all the time. They wait until the last 5 minutes that we're sharing something of our session when they bring out the biggest piece of information.
Right.
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 So it's just kind of known.
In psychiatry, but particularly in psychology also, you don't read what the patient says. You definitely read the lines, but you also read what's in between the lines.
Exactly.
And that's very, very important.
and you
because-
mentioned that last Sunday.
Right, right. Because in communication, that's what a specialty is about. That not only what the patient says is important, but how he says,
Right.
and more importantly, what the patient is not
What they're
saying.
not
Uh-huh.
And but it's very evident from the way
Body
they look,
language.
body language.
So you are really well versed in body language as well as everything else.
Well, I think we maybe watch for body language maybe a little more so than other areas
Our
of medicine.
choice of
Or
words.
just-
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
Very
how they're
important.
responding. But I think the really important thing is a lot of what we do is based on how we interact with the patient, meaning that when the patient comes to trust us, that really hard stuff that's real difficult that they don't want to talk about,
yeah.
they'll start to talk about it because they really do want to feel better. By the time they
Right.
get to us, they're wanting to feel better. So it's really about trust. Once they know that they can trust us, then the harder things come out.
Well, is it more difficult? Oh, we just got a few minutes, so I want you to be thinking about these problems for us to discuss next time. Is it harder to treat a man or a woman, and is it harder to treat an adult or a child as far as getting to the bottom of the information? We're going to have to take another break, and we'll be back in just a minute and finish this conversation for today with Dr. Jane and Dr. Caples.
Stay tuned. West Texas View will be right back.